Poverty from Indian Economic Development, textbook for class 11th. So, and this is the NCERT book. So, how are poor people identified? In India, if India is to solve the problem of poverty, it has to find viable and sustainable strategies to address the causes of poverty and design schemes to help the poor out of their situation. However, for these schemes to be implemented, the government needs to be able to identify who the poor are. For this, there is need to develop a scale to measure poverty, and the factors that make up the criteria for this measurement or mechanism need to be carefully chosen. In pre-independent India, Dadabhai Naoroji was the first to discuss the concept of a poverty line. He used the menu for a prisoner and used appropriate prevailing prices to arrive at what may be called jail cost of living. However, only adults stay in jail, whereas in an actual society there are children too. He therefore appropriately adjusted this cost of living to arrive at the poverty line. For this adjustment, he assumed that 1/3 population consisted of children and half of them consumed very little while the other half consumed half of the adult diet. This is how he arrived at the factor of 3/4, that is 1/6 into nil plus 1/6 into half plus 2/3 into full is equal to 3/4 full. The weighted average of consumption of the three segments gives the average poverty line, which comes out to be 3/4 of the adult jail cost of living. So once again, for the adjustment, he assumed that 1/3 population consisted of children and half of them consumed very little while the other half consumed half of the adult diet. This is how he arrived at the factor of 3/4, that is 1/6 into nil plus 1/6 into half plus 2/3 into full is equal to 3/4 into full. The weighted average of consumption of the three segment gives the average poverty line, which comes out to be 3/4 of the adult jail cost of living. In post-independent India, there have been several attempts to work out a mechanism to identify the number of poor in the country. For instance, in 1962, the Planning Commission formed a study group. In 1979, another body called the Task Force on Projections of Minimum Needs and Effective Consumption Demand was formed. In 1989 and 2005, expert groups were constituted for the same purpose. Besides Planning Commission, many individual economists have also attempted to develop such a mechanism. For the purpose of defining poverty line, we divide people into two categories, the poor and the non-poor, and the poverty line separates the two. However, there are many kinds of poor: the absolutely poor, the very poor, and the poor. Similarly, there are various kinds of non-poor: the middle class, the upper middle class, the rich, the very rich, and the absolutely rich. Think of this as a line or from the very poor to the absolutely rich, with a poverty line dividing the poor from the non-poor. So in this chart 4.1, we see that they have shown this is the line which is known as the poverty line, and on the left side to it is the absolutely poor, the very poor, and the poor. So poor are here, and then when you move out to this chart here, then you have what is known as not so poor. Then you have middle class, then you have upper middle class, you have the rich, the very rich, the millionaires, and the billionaires. Okay. So we just saw the line or the continuum from the very poor to the absolutely rich, with a poverty line dividing the poor from the non-poor. So I hope you understand what is continuum. It is a continuous sequence in which adjacent elements, that is, we are just talking about poverty, right? They are not different from each other, but the extremes are quite distinct.